Well, hello, broads. You know that I had to hop on this episode beforehand to do a little bit of housekeeping because this episode is pre-recorded. We go back to our regularly scheduled program on Tuesday. But in the meantime, I have to say, first and foremost, stop whatever you're doing. And if you have not done so, please register to vote. It is so important. It is so imperative. And we have a link to help you register to vote if you have not in the episode notes. In fact, we also have a link so that you can double check to make sure you actually are registered to vote in the episode notes as well. Many election seasons ago, I was convinced that I was registered to vote. And in fact, the day of came and I was disappointed/devastated in myself to find out that in fact, I actually was not registered to vote. But we are learning out here. We are growing and we are quadruple checking to make sure we are registered to vote. In fact, the link that I put in the episode notes, I think I've checked about 75 times now through that link to make sure I am registered. So you can join me in quadruple check and let us be voting broads. Let us be ballot broads out here. Okay. It is so important. We'll hashtag ballot broad together. And speaking of voting, I know that we mentioned a few podcasts ago, if you would like to nominate us for the People's Choice Podcast Awards, obviously that would mean so much, but turns out after we told you about it, they took down the nominations for a hot minute, but said that they would be back up again on October 1st. I'm not 100% clear about what that's exactly going to look like, but today is October 1st. So if that is true, and if the links are live, we will be putting it on our Chatty Broads Instagram. And if you feel inclined to vote for us, that would mean so much. I know Bekah and I were joking a few episodes ago. We're like, we're so competitive and we haven't gotten nominated for anything. But a couple days ago, we were on the phone and we were just talking about how it's like, you know what? Even if we don't get nominated for anything ever, we are both very confident that we have a community, the hashtag Broad Squad, that is one of the most tight-knit podcast communities amongst yourselves. Like the hashtag Broad Supporting Broads that we're seeing on a daily basis and the relationships that are formed, and just a group of people who are growing and active and I don't know, just a powerful group of people. And we're forever in awe and grateful and so thankful for that. So even if we're never nominated for anything, we feel like we've already won because of all of you. And that is my emotional mom speech. Wow, she's emo today, kids. She's an emotional broad today. Oh, Lord. Anyways, love you all very much. Grateful for you all. Last bit of housekeeping here. In like a week and a half, The Bachelorette is starting. Can you believe? October 13th, the first episode of The Bachelorette is airing. We cannot wait to start these recaps again. But as you probably know, the 13th of October is a Tuesday. So instead of getting these episodes on Mondays, we will be watching them on Tuesdays, which means that the recaps will be coming out on Wednesdays instead. So our episode drop schedule will change somewhat. Instead of us dropping episodes on Tuesdays and Thursdays, we will be dropping episodes on Wednesdays and Fridays. I'm so sorry. I know that's probably annoying, and trust me, it's like going to be all weird in our brains for our schedule too. And we're like, what are we going to do? This has just been how it is for so long. But ABC is deciding to give us The Bachelorette on Tuesdays. So the recaps are coming Wednesdays. So Wednesdays and Fridays will be the new schedule. That's not going to start next week. That's going to be the following week, the first week that The Bachelorette airs. Don't worry. We'll keep reminding you all in the Chatty Broads or on the Chatty Broads Instagram, but just wanted to give you all a heads up to prepare yourselves, mind, body, and soul. So without further ado, I'm going to stop talking and we're going to chat with who you came here to listen to, Rob Bell and his son, Trace Bell. Enjoy, broads.
And welcome to another episode of Chatty Broads with Bekah and Jess.
Well, hello, broads.
Hello.
What is going on, B?
Happy Thursday. Time stamping again. We're recording this on September 21st.
Yes, and
This
it's
is
not going to be
coming out-
released. Yeah, next week.
October?
No, it'll be. Oh yeah, like October 2nd.
Or is it the 31st? 30 days has September. No, yep, it'll be October 1st.
Weird. We've been time stamping because things have been happening so quickly in this world that we don't want you to think that we're ignoring any problems that are currently going on.
We're trying to cover our asses, basically,
to make
just
sure
in
that we're
case. People
okay.
are like, how could you not mention blah, blah, blah? I said, it didn't happen
It didn't happen yet. It's the future. But speaking of the future, we're going to have a conversation about something bigger, brighter than what's going on. And for that to happen, we needed to bring back Rob Bell.
Yeah, I can't believe it's already almost been
Seriously.
over a year.
So good to be back.
Oh, so nice to see
I got
you.
greeted by the dog. I see you all. We
yes.
catch up. It's just everything.
It's weird in person moments. It just doesn't happen very often anymore.
It's special.
I know.
I was going to say, we're also joined by Rob Bell's son.
Yes.
This was
Yes.
impromptu,
Trace.
actually.
Yes. Yeah.
Jess
Trace
misunderstood.
Bell, Robert Holmes Bell the third. Spanish
a
for
duo.
three is
Yeah.
Trace.
So Trace.
There he
I
is.
read that in the book.
Trace.
Yep.
So.
But it's
Yeah.
the American version, so it's TRACE. So it's,
Well, yeah, this was impromptu.
Yeah.
So
Basically just misunderstood and thought,
or was it impromptu, or was this kind of secretly planned?
I think that
Kinda
this is
like-
probably all a destiny
Exactly,
situation, and
yeah.
that's fine, and that
Yeah.
works out. Because I thought that we were on like we're gonna have like a family. Rob just put out a very personal book. We'll have like a familial conversation.
and then we come in and Rob's like, he's not joining. He wasn't supposed to join us for the podcast,
great.
but
I
we
don't
said
know.
bring him to
I
the
think,
table.
I think spirit works in mysterious ways. So I think everything's pervaded.
Spirit
by-
is working.
Yeah.
Well, how have you been in all of this? Let's just start there.
How's your
There-
year been?
There are 5 of us in our family. We've been in our house for 6 months now.
Okay.
Go out for groceries once or twice a week.
Okay.
You know, try to do all the right things.
Where are you?
I got
Where do
my
you guys
mask
live?
here.
Are you in LA proper?
West Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
So like Fairfax district.
Oh, yep. You're in the.
So the
you're in
looting came like 8 doors from our house.
Whoa.
Yeah. And everything like on Melrose there is all pretty much boarded up.
Oh my God.
Craziness.
No, it's been completely surreal. It's like the great upheaval.
I moved to Long Beach, and even that difference with coronavirus has been kind of night and day. Like, you know, when everyone was going to Trader Joe's and sending pics of all the empty shelves, we didn't quite have the same situation. So it's kind of interesting the difference, even like, you know,
Right.
15 to 20 miles
Just
can
a
make.
few miles.
Yeah, no, it's been interesting even just hearing from our listeners when all of this first started and being like, is this going on with you? And like some people, it's like, I don't know what you're talking about. And some people are like in the heat of it.
Over in Montana, you know, they're at
Right.
their
Yeah.
local bar. Everyone's hanging out. Things are
Right.
good. Life is good.
I have
numbers
this friend
are
who's an
low.
emergency room doctor. So, and he's the emergency room in Seattle that was like the epicenter of the whole thing. So right when it first was like, hey, there's this thing coming, he would send emails like, yeah, watched somebody died and their partner had to watch them through a glass wall. He was like,
Oh, God.
just
Oh
sort
my
of
God.
telling me like what this really is like. So from the get-go, I was like, oh, this is so real.
Yeah.
This is not like a hoax. This is like, it was just so fascinating from the get-go to have somebody
Wow.
like a doctor
in
being
the
like,
middle
this
of
thing
it.
is like really, really bad.
Yeah.
If you don't take it seriously, even if people don't die from it, what happens to them? Like how much pain it puts a person in.
Yeah, we had a good friend of ours who has been on the podcast a bunch who ended up getting it like right at the top. So, and was in the emergency room or the ICU for like 2 weeks, and he was
gnarly.
healthy before and young. So
Yeah.
it was kind of like this, you know, you'd hit and it was serious business.
So as soon as you know somebody or have talked to somebody, then that entire world of like fuzzy, I don't know, is it real? Is it? You're like,
Sure.
no, totally real.
Yeah.
Totally serious.
Trust, yeah.
Gonna like wreck so many things for so long if it's not taken seriously.
You can
Yeah.
tell people that haven't actually, like, don't know anyone that's actually experienced it, because
Yeah.
they just are like, it's like it exists as like some abstract kind of like
Oh, yeah.
thing out there, but when you actually know someone, it's like,
boogeyman.
yeah.
And it is very different. People who have gotten it now versus like in March, just because of the things that they know to do or not to do
Yeah.
now than they did 6 months ago.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, with all the current things going on, I have to say, Rob, you have a new book out called Everything is Spiritual. And I'm wondering did you have some sort of premonition about what was going to be going on? Because I felt like reading it, I was like, this seems like an appropriate book for 2020.
Yeah, isn't that interesting?
Yeah.
So many people have said that.
I felt like I was reading it. I'm like, there's no way that you didn't write this about a month ago and then just put it out.
Isn't that strange?
Yeah.
It's because the message of the book is timeless. I think the lessons in it are timeless.
Yeah, at some level it's timeless, and at some level I'm trying to introduce people to ancient wisdom about spirit that's lurking in the mess. So there's this divine, creative, animating energy that's present in all the dark waters, in the upheaval and the disruption and the chaos and the disorientation, and out of it comes new creation. That's like an ancient pattern. So go back through your life for all the moments when it all broke your heart and fell apart, and then trace all the new things that came out of that. Something ended, which means something new had to be birthed. So it's actually a very individual truth, but then the collective political is always just a larger expression of the individual. So everybody right now is going through this upheaval.
Yeah.
So it's not going to go back to how it was. So it's like orientation, disorientation, and then reorientation. It's actually an ancient pattern. So when everybody starts right now freaking out, are we going to be okay? We're in the midst of, yeah, of course, heartbreak. Of course, rising death toll. Disclaimer. But yeah, now is when you keep your eyes open. Education, healthcare, politics, how we think about our neighbor, all of this, it's all a giant invitation to like rethink all of it.
That's what we've been talking about.
That's what you guys have been talking about. Yeah.
I'm obsessed with this book. I won't even go into it right now. I talk about it every goddamn episode. But it's about what you're saying. It's like these patterns that have happened throughout history. And it's like, you know, things have to fall apart, like so that they can be built back up. Like that has to come at some point.
Absolutely.
Like on a consistent basis.
For there to be a new creation, there has to be some sort of disruption of the present creation. Yeah.
And it's funny because I feel like, especially at the top of all of this, like my immediate reaction is like, I cover my eyes and I go in my hole and I'm like, it doesn't exist. And I mean, I think if it wasn't for the podcast, when you're having to like, you know, really keep up with everything that's going on, like news-wise, I would just be keeping my eyes closed. But then when you're saying this is when you have to be watching, it feels so important, because as each day passes and there is something painful, there's been also this kind of spark of like, but what does then this mean? And that was one of the things with the book that I kept taking away, that it was like, there is like, what does this mean afterwards, instead of just letting it be this like death or negative space.
Yeah, there's something else lurking here. I remember that first day when everything got shut down and Trace and I went and got groceries. Remember that feeling like, all right, okay, for the weekend, we're supposed to stay inside. Got it. We got enough food for the weekend. We can do this.
There's like no toilet paper.
Yeah, and you see your first
find a movie
empty shelf and you okay, and then this will be passed. And then we'll go back. And everybody there, where the language was, we'll go back to normal. And then ever so gradually, you begin to realize, oh, we're not going back to a normal. We're going into some other thing that we haven't been to before. And then you could see it shift into, then like you see the sort of the spiritual malaise of panic, terror. What is this? Yeah, and this is always, keep your eyes open. You feel it, you give it expression, but you also keep your eyes open.
It's kind of funny, people's responses too. Like I was cracking up seeing people grabbing gallons of water, and I'm like, what do you think coronavirus is going to like shut off? Are we going to shut off the power and water in the cities? Like, what do you think is happening here? People are like, you know, but we all go to this place of like Armageddon, the apocalypse. It's ending. It's
irrational
over.
Stockpiling.
Yes.
Whatever it is, just get a big pile of it and then you'll be okay.
And then you're fine.
And I think there's been a mourning this coronavirus, the mourning of what we thought was normal. I think a lot of people are kind of that like, well, when are things going to get back to normal? I think a lot of people that's almost like a they're in denial a little bit, like, oh, things actually can go back to normal, but there's actually like a mourning process about what actually was normal. Like it actually forces us to actually look at what do we consider normal, and is it's dying. You know, it's an old creation that's dying in front of us. So we're actually gonna build a new normal, because that old creation, that new creation are linked. When the new creation has to have the death of old creation.
Well, yeah. And there's also sort of this, I think, like we idolize what used to be the old normal and sort of don't really unpack, like you're saying, like what was normal? What do we think was normal before? And you look at like other countries. I mean, we're just talking about the coronavirus right now. You look at other countries, like it's normal in China to like wear a mask when you're like in an airport, because you're exposed to a bunch of diseases, a bunch of gross things that people are passing around. And that's like not normal in the US, and that's crazy. So it's like maybe some of these things we should take forward, because that's like good. And maybe the way we used to do things as normal wasn't great.
Yep.
The irony being too is that it was like 2019. Everyone was like, it was the worst year ever, 2020. And now everyone's just like, but what about 2019? I want to go back there. It's
I don't even remember why people said 2019 was bad.
I don't remember.
Yeah, I was
either.
gonna say, well, why was 2019 bad?
I don't remember, but I remember that was just everywhere. It was like 2020, it's going to be my year by 2019. And it's just like,
Come
Psych.
March, everyone's like, no.
yeah,
Psych.
exactly. Okay, well, Rob, this book, Everything is Spiritual, very personal.
Yeah.
And I feel like definitely in like your past books, they've had personal elements, absolutely. But this is like very personal. Why did that shift?
This was also really similar to your talk that we attended last year. I can't remember what the title of it was.
We went your like one-time talk at the Largo.
Wait, did you go see Son of a Judge?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, that like, yeah, tear. Just yeah, everybody just in tears.
Yeah, it was very
But
emotional.
I felt like this was really like similar to that. Even some of the stories were
Guess which
the
book
same.
I was writing when I did that show.
I wondered about that, because
Makes
like
sense.
a lot of the themes felt like they were born out of that.
Yeah. Because I started out, I always found the big questions and big mysteries fascinating. The world that I came from. Well, then you'd be a pastor. Mm-hmm. So I did that, because every group, family, tribe, subculture, it has like its path. Well, then here's how you would do that. Mm-hmm. So I did that. And so you study and you reflect on things and you give sermons, and then I wrote books. But I found myself like, where did these ideas come from? Because I sort of came from a world that valued intellectual rigor. So there's the idea, there's the truth, almost like capital T, that exists sort of detached from time and space. And then the people who are in, or the people who are orthodox or correct, all agree to the same stuff. And those people over there don't agree to that. So, but I was like, where did these ideas, like, when did I stumble across all of this that shaped me? Mm-hmm. And instead of the story being an illustration of the truth, the story is the truth. This isn't an abstract thing we're doing here. So it became like, well, what was it like when I first came across that? But to write about that, like when I'm 7, when I'm 11, when I'm 19, meant then you have to write about it like when you were 19. So capture what it felt like, as opposed to the detached person who gets it all. Mm-hmm. Write about it with a certain innocence. Mm-hmm. What was it like to keep going? What was it like? So the book in many ways is just things not going, like things not working that well, like a series of embarrassing incidents. And I remember like I remember typing the line at one point, I felt so much shame, and being like, that's not a Rob Bell sentence. There's no like fireworks in that. It's just, what a boring sentence. But that's the only, just tell the story. Just tell what it was like. Do you know what I mean? It was like recovering. It was like this exercise in owning every square inch of my story. Just own it all the awkward, all the falling down a flight of stairs, all the misunderstanding. Just own every square inch of it. So that's almost like a feeling more than an idea. So that's my hope, is that people pick that up.
Well, the shame part was is underlined currently in this book. That whole paragraph is underlined because, obviously, if you're listening and didn't listen to our Rob Bell episode before, you should. But you were a pastor, And in this book, you're talking about how that started off. It was an art form for you.
Yeah, still is.
Still is. Yeah.
Maybe you could actually briefly talk about your background and so all of that, because I know not everyone listening now has even heard the first episode or even knows who you are. So maybe you can do a little bit of that.
Yeah. I was in a band in college. We thought we were going to be the next REM. That dates it properly. Midnight Oil, Violent Femmes, and Red Hot Chili Peppers. And the band broke up and I had no idea what I was going to do. And my parents had taken us to church growing up. But I always felt like when they would take us to church, like, wait, this should be so much better. This is the juice, the mojo. This is the questions. What are we doing here? Like, these are the big questions. Why is this gathering so lame? But I always did find the Jesus stories really compelling. The nonviolence. And whenever there's a group of people who are the in people who have pushed somebody to the outside, he always goes to the person who's been pushed to the outside. There was something in those stories that I found so profound and inspiring. But then the whole sort of system was like, what? It was like people in sweater vests with acoustic guitar. It was just like, what? What is this? So I think something happened my senior year of college. I'm going to go study that stuff and do it like differently. There's got to be a way to do this that makes it as interesting as all the stuff we all talk about when we're with our friends. Like, what kind of universe is it? And how do you figure out who you are? And how do you forgive people who've wronged you? Like all the stuff we actually all want help on.
Sure.
Yeah. So I went to seminary and did all that and studied, and then got a job in a church. And then after a while, I was like, there's got to be a better way. So my wife, Kristen, and I, we started a church, and it was almost like a giant art project. It was literally like, how do you want to do it? And tons of people came, like tons of people.
Yeah.
So suddenly we're like 29. There's like 10,000 people. There's like 80.
How did that happen? Just like word of mouth?
Yeah, because someone rented a sign to put out front of this building someone let us use. And I was like, no, you have to take away the sign. You have to like want it really bad. Because I had all these like almost like punk rock instincts.
Right.
I was like, let's stop taking an
this
offering.
is like the Soho House of churches.
This is underground.
Yeah.
It was super punk rock in that area because I was West Michigan. So like
This
the
was
church
in
was
West
like
Michigan.
groundbreaking.
You gotta know someone to
So
get
there were
in.
so
kind of
many-
thing.
Yeah.
People there were like these massive traffic jams. So I remember deciding not to take an offering because I was like, the whole money and religion from so many people is like gross.
Right.
So I was like, okay, first off, let's give a good chunk of the offerings away, just off the top. Secondly, there was this welder who's like, I could make some big iron boxes and just put them in the back. I was like, excellent. We'll just put some huge boxes, like boxes in the back that you can't just carry away. Then if you want to give money, you can.
Right.
So it was all the ideas where you're like, what if it was just about asking questions? And then I would do these sermons, which were from the Bible, but the Bible as an anti-empire, real people in real places at real times, humans wrestling with all the same stuff we're wrestling with. Mm-hmm. So that's what it was like. It was this energy. It was like this, had like this communal, it was like electric. Mm-hmm. So I did that for a number of years, and then you got to keep going. You got to like keep exploring. So one of the things about having a church is it's almost like it's a temple. So you come in out of the world into the temple, but that's not the point. The whole thing is a temple. All of life is holy. So at some point you're running this large spiritual enterprise, but you're spending so much of your time going, this isn't the point. The point is you're washing dishes, you're with your partner, you're with your kid, and that's the top of the mountain. That's the sacred. That's the holy in everyday life. So that it's not actually leaving your normal life and going to some place. It's having your eyes open to the presence in all of life. Mm. And so then I go, well, then let's go farther. And then Oprah gave me a TV show. So I did that. And then I kept touring, and then there were more books. And then, so it's just been great. It's been so much fun. Yeah.
All right, broads. I love life hacks. Like anything that makes life easier, more efficient, and more seamless. Sign me the hell up, which is why when I finally realized that grocery shopping in person isn't the only option anymore, thanks to Thrive Market. I was absolutely thrilled. Thrive Market has totally changed the way that I shop for my family's food, beauty, and home products, and I have no plans to return to in-person shopping anytime soon.
Thrive Market is the online membership-based market on a mission to make healthy living easy and affordable for everyone. I do the bulk of my shopping on Thrive Market since becoming a member, and not only does it save me a ton of time, it also saves me money. And in my first order alone, I saved enough money to cover the membership. So if you have picky eaters or specific dietary restrictions, this is perfect for you. Thrive Market makes it easy to shop for over 70 diets and values like keto, gluten-free, vegan, and so many more. And it's never been easier to find food that fits your life and lifestyle.
I think the thing that blows me away about Thrive Market the most is that they carry the same products that you would find in other healthy, high-end grocery stores. But with the membership, you can save so much on these products. Like, I don't even understand how they do that. It's amazing, a miracle. I've been loving their cleaning products lately, and also getting all the snacks from them, the Smart Sweets. I've been just having so many. Thrive Market is good for you and the planet as well. Orders of $49 or more are shipped for free and delivered with carbon neutral shipping from their zero waste warehouses. And when you join, you give back. Through Thrive gives their one for one membership matching program. Every paid membership sponsors a free one for a low-income family, which is so amazing. And in addition to membership matching, Thrive Market has raised over $1 million to date through their COVID-19 relief fund. We love Thrive. They're so amazing.
Yes, we do love them. And I love the programs that they have. They're awesome. So just go to thrivemarket.com/chatty and join today, and you'll get a free gift of your choosing up to $24 in value. That's THRIVE market.com/chatty. And that's where you can start your risk-free membership, and you're going to get a free gift today. That's thrivemarket.com/chatty.
Another thing to think about, is there any better feeling than arriving home to a package you forgot you were getting in the mail? It gives me genuine excitement. It's like a gift to me from past me. So fun. And you know my favorite box to come home to is FabFitFun. Oh, it's been a while since we sang that. It feels good.
It's been way too long. So if you've never ordered a FabFitFun box before, here is the deal. Each season, you're going to get a box delivered right to your door, valued at over $200 for only $49.99. And in the box, you'll get a variety of full-size premium wellness, beauty, and home products curated just for FabFitFun members. And I swear, I found some of my favorite skincare products from the boxes, among other favorite items. The selections are seriously so good.
They're so good. I think I'm maybe on my millionth box right now, and I'm still just as obsessed as when I had first started getting their boxes, because each season is curated so differently. I always feel like I find a new favorite in every box, and right now their members pick box is on sale, which is basically a box of top-rated, most coveted picks by their members over the past few seasons. And I don't want to give too much away, because one of the best parts is being surprised as you open your box, but let's just say there's a pair of fur-trimmed slippers in this box that I don't anticipate taking off all winter long. They are the coziest things I've ever seen, and I'm ready to get my fall and winter on. Ugh, I love FabFitFun so much. There's just too many good things to even start talking about. It's endless. Yeah. Endless.
Agreed. So it's time to customize your box for the fall season. You can sign up today and you'll receive your first box and a community of over 1 million who are already obsessed. Just use coupon code CHATTY for $10 off your first box at fabfitfun.com. Code CHATTY, $10 off your first box at fabfitfun.com.
When you had the shift, I'm curious.
Trace grew up.
That's what I was going to say. What was that? What was that like? Like, how old when the church blew up? How old were you?
I think I just remember it there all the time.
He was born in 98, and we started the church in 99.
Yeah, I always had a weird relationship with the church, though.
Yeah.
Do me a favor, get a little closer.
Yeah, okay, here we go. How's this?
Good.
I was so indifferent towards it all the time. Like, organized religion was never interesting to me, but I wasn't like one of those people that's like, oh, this is so stupid, I hate this. But I also didn't connect with it, and I didn't really love it either. So I was kind of had this like weird middle ground. Like, I was kind of like indifferent towards it. I remember sitting in service and being like, I don't know what I'm supposed to be feeling. Like, I don't get this. It wasn't till I actually understood later in my life what religion was actually intended to do, which was the experience of spirit, that then religion became interesting to me. And not because, I don't want to go back and kind of immerse myself in this religion. I more now respect religion for now seeing what it was intended to do. And that's why that's my favorite part about his book is that he, from a pastor's perspective, he kind of shows you his spiritual journey, and he acknowledges the what religion is intended to do, because he was interested in religion because he was interested in the experience of spirit. But then he also shows how there's certain limitations of religion that actually can prevent that experience. So the dogma and the rules and the kind of framework that religion was supposed to help people experience spirit can actually be the one thing that gets in the way of experiencing spirit. So once I understood religion as an experience of spirit, and once I actually experienced spirit myself, then religion became interesting to me. But it then cleared up why it wasn't interesting to me when I was a kid, because that wasn't where I didn't experience spirit through religion. So I was like, how I experienced this beautiful thing that pervades all of life, it wasn't through church services. It wasn't sitting through church services. So I had this like intuitive kind of like indifference towards it. Did you
feel comfortable expressing that to your parents, or like was that something you were aware of at the time?
We didn't really. I never felt like a connection to the church. So like I don't remember us ever talking about.
I do.
He probably knew though. That's the thing.
Yeah. See, he was like an old soul.
Yeah.
It's like at a young age, you could see that Trace could see the playing field, if that makes sense. He just wasn't playing the game other 8 or 9-year-old or 11-year-olds, where he could totally had friends but there was always like a knowing with him. So I remember you, like we would be then we'd put no religious pressure whatsoever.
Yeah, that was the thing.
Okay, there was no pressure.
Zero,
yeah.
ever.
Wow. So
you don't want to go to church? Fine.
So pastor son, there was
I never considered myself a Christian. I don't think there's ever a point in my life where I was a Christian.
Because Kristen and I were like, then you're just giving a kid a ton of stuff they're going to have to unlearn later. So they're going to have their own path.
Because they didn't pressure me, I also didn't rebel against it later. You see how then I actually was able to acknowledge it, and there wasn't this like tension, because some parents push things on their children, and then there's the children obviously want to like rebel and react, but there was no pressure on it. So
hello, nice to meet you.
So this is just a parental lesson though, because they never pressured it on me. There was never any like subsequent kind of reaction to that. It was just like letting me be as I am and letting me feel how I wanted to feel about it. And then later, now I have an appreciation for it. Now I have a love for what it was originally intended to do.
Sure, because when you're talking about people who are like, oh, this is stupid, I don't want to have anything to do with it, a lot of times that's operating from a place of like trauma, or a place where like
it was pushed on them.
Yeah, or maybe they had like a bad experience, or they were invalidated for whatever because of the church.
There was a certain intensity into the pressure that was put on negative, them. That then there's an intensity about how they're against it now.
Yeah,
they see the intensity. But if you just let your kids be, then they'll stumble on the truth their own way, and they'll find their own path.
Was that a conversation you and your wife had before having kids? Or how did you get to that point?
I think we just always saw it that way. It doesn't work to force the thing on a kid. It just doesn't work.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And they're watching you anyway. They're watching you in traffic. They're watching you handle money. They know whether it works for you or not. So your whole thing, like they're watching you. You either have like joy and peace, and life is actually like a good thing.
Right.
And Kristen and I had the sense when we got married that the whole thing is an adventure you get to go on, and that we had found each other. So we just saw it like, this is what we're doing. We had noticed people, especially people in like pastor world, who were like, I know you can't have any toys for Christmas, but it's because we're like, it was like this, we're sacrificing for this thing. Yeah. And the kid's like, I didn't sign up. So we just saw it, and we didn't have that feeling at all. We didn't feel like we were missing out on anything with our life. Just in the sense of like, this is what we want to do. We want to help people like this. Mm-hmm. Of course, they'll be taken care of. But we also just had this sense like the kid doesn't sign up for any of that stuff. Even the mythology or the stories that get told about it. The kid just wants to be a kid. So we were like, let's just have a great life. And Trace had this like wisdom. So I remember we would talk about, I remember like when we started touring, I mean, he would be around on stuff, or when we were shooting those short films. I remember he would be like, Dad, that's good. That was interesting. Or, I mean, he would say, we would interact like adults about the work. Mm-hmm. Do you remember any of that?
I could always see what my dad was doing. Like even before I really understood it, I could always like see what he was kind of connecting to.
Was, yeah.
Even if I didn't fully like grasp exactly what he was doing, I could always see where he was going with it.
Yeah, that's what I remember about him, is like he'd be like, yeah, that was cool. Or we would talk, you know what I mean?
You
like
get the approval, you
like
get the trace approval.
like a yeah, like your son is your big brother.
Right,
you know what I mean?
the barometer of like
well done. I could see that he could see like the larger playing field and what it was and how it helped people. He just wasn't caught up in any of the other stuff.
I'm very curious about this, just, because we're raising our own children.
I think, between the two of us, I think we have.
Yeah, right.
I'm curious to hear both of your perspectives.
No, I'm saying like an interview. We've never done an interview about any of this.
No.
Isn't that funny?
I like it.
Prepare for more questions.
So
Keep going.
I'm curious about how you imparted, or if you imparted, a sense of like objective truth to your children, or if that was a thing that happened when kids start asking big questions like, what happens when I die? Where did we come from? Did you impart your beliefs in that sense, or did you leave it sort of up to them to choose their own way? Because I'm always curious about this, because sometimes kids need this sense of security that their like parents know what's happening and what's going on.
Yeah, right.
So how did you
I've been getting those
that?
questions lately. My daughter's been asking me every day, like, what happens when we die? Like, all those fun questions.
I mean, like
Is there God?
I mean, like a 3-year-old. Well, Timmy. Mm-hmm. It's just an existential free-for-all from here on out. Uncertainty is baked into the whole thing. Your soul will shrink and shrivel into a small pile of eternal bacon, given the flames you're going to endure. Right? There's a whole world of things. You're not just you're going to meet the kid with, Mom and I are here. We love you.
Yes, a sense
People
of
have been
security.
talking about these things for thousands of years. These are all. I just always saw the questions, and as opposed to the questions need to be answered, the questions are welcome to all of the most interesting stuff humans have been discovering and discussing.
You'll never know.
So it's like
None of us ever will.
I think you need to celebrate that curiosity. If your kid is asking deep metaphysical questions, instead of focusing too much on trying to answer them and what's an answer I can give them, that actually have them appreciate the fact that they're even asking those questions, because those are really important, because those are showing you a deep, intuitive. That's a curiosity that's very important for. Yeah, and really beautiful.
Maybe I should ask this. What did you grow up believing? Just because I can so clearly remember what was imparted to me, Jesus died in the cross. He goes to live in your heart, and he does that when you ask him to come into your heart, so we're all
not a moment earlier.
Yes. Yes. And you have to say it verbally, and like all these different things are like, I know exactly what I thought.
Left Behind books, second to the Bible.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, both of you. I'm sorry.
That's okay. We're good now.
I don't know why I would be a part. I'm sorry. I have sorrow that you had to go through that.
All three of you guys got raised in that religious nonsense. I never bought into any of the Christian stuff. So any of the like Christian explanations for why things were here or reality, I never bought into. But I also was never an atheist either. Mm-hmm. People were to ask me, I would always have said like, even when I was a little kid, like, I think there's something higher than us, or I think that there's something more to just, because the idea that the literal interpretation of the Bible and the Christian explanation for why we're here was always so ridiculous to me. Like, there's a God out here and Satan, blah, blah, blah. It was always like, that's silly. But then on the other side was the atheist side, which is there's nothing out here. It's just us. And I was like, that's equally as silly. Cause like, that feels like another religion to me too. Those feel like both like fundamentalist beliefs, is that there's some God out there that's creating everything, and then there's nothing out there. It's just us humans, and it's just So I always said like, I believe that there was something higher than us out there. I believe that there was something more, but even before. So I kind of have almost like an agnostic, like, I don't know exactly, but I just have an intuitive sense that there's something more to this whole experience than those two explanations.
I love an 8-year-old agnostic. I love that.
Kristen and I would say that. We would say, wow, Trace flew through the hyper-rational stage of development. He was there really early. He could see the absurdities and the inconsistencies really early.
Yeah.
I do distinctly remember we would discuss that with Trace. Like, oh yeah, he sees through. So with the kid who sees through the whole thing, then whatever you do, just let him.
Yeah, they did a good job. They did a good job. They just hands off, just like let me. Yeah.
It's so funny. Yeah. You remind me of my boyfriend because he went through I don't know the Catholic thing. Is it confirmation that happens around like age 11 or so or something like that?
You get asked a bunch of questions.
Yes, and then they did it in front of the church. Yeah, they did it in front of the church, I guess, or whatever. And it's like, do you accept? I don't know what they say. Like Jesus. Basically, what they're asking is like, do you accept Jesus? Is like sort of the thing. And he was just like, no. He was just like, no, I don't buy it. Yeah. And his mom was just like, why did you have to do that to me? You could have just told me you didn't want to do it. And he was like, oh, I don't know. I just didn't. I never bought any of it all along. And that just, we operate differently. I think that's so interesting. I think that's awesome.
There's an interesting thing about your question. A parent does have an answer for every single question the kid is asking. The answer is how the parent lives. So the problem for many people is, like you said, absolute truth. It all gets stuck up in the head in abstract conceptual terms. But whatever question the kid, your daughter is asking if you move it to heart and embodiment, you do have some answer to that question. What happens when we die? Well, how do I live? I trust. I trust that death is like another beginning of some sort. That life is good, and that when you die, whatever this is over, but something new begins. Or I mean, we could probably ask you a bunch of questions about every question your daughter is asking.
Yes.
And there's some way that you live your life. So it's interesting when you're talking about like how you grew up, they separated these absolute things that you're supposed to believe, but then all the people who are talking about that, they actually live a particular way. They treat the earth a particular way. They think about economics a certain way. They're raising their kid a certain, you know what I mean? So as soon as you can get rid of that split between these abstract concepts, objective truth, absolute truth, and how you actually live, and just, they're all an expression. They're all ultimately bound. Then it's a much more interesting discussion.
Well, the idea that you and Kristen were raising Trace with kind of like, it's your call. You're asking questions. We're giving you the answers like you're discussing. You're not forced to participate or believe in all these things. The idea of opening up a child to just be truly themselves. And now here you come and you have this like old soul. You're able to just like transcend to a certain place quickly is so exciting to me to think about raising a kid to just be themselves.
Well, it's
You said that
this
like it's the
wild-
most profound and new idea ever.
I mean, it is
it
to a
is,
certain
'cause it is,
extent,
yeah.
because it's like I know exactly how, I am. I know who I am at the core to a certain extent, but it's also ingrained with all the things that when I was, 2, being told these like hard-line facts of this is right, this is wrong, this is correct, this is false, and then you're trying to navigate through that. But to not have that at all, you just get like this pure version.
Well, and to give parents some grace and maybe to it's not like we all give our children's truths of some sort. We say this is wrong, this is right.
Yes.
And a lot of that is subjective, You could say it's wrong for someone to act this way. It's right to do this. And it's like, so we are imparting our truths onto our kids
Constantly.
Of course.
Kids need frameworks, and guidelines. But it's when the frameworks and the guidelines become like a hindrance to their actual growth and their actual curiosity. That's the thing because kids, developmentally, everyone has different stages, and there's certain answers that work in different stages. Like he was saying, you don't tell your 3-year-old like deep metaphysical existential.
Breaking
Like you
down
have
my kid's brain.
you kind of lead them along, but there's a point where you take the training wheels off. And you give them some training wheels to help them grow and help them to answer some questions they have. But then you have to make sure that what you're giving them doesn't become a hindrance to their curiosity that was within them from the start.
Right. Sure. Yeah. Or they know that they have the option to question and change their mind and believe something different than mom and dad think. you know?
Right. That's what I mean. Like with that hard line where it's like, okay, the difference being if my daughter asks me what happens when you die, and I say, I don't know. And let's talk about it versus,
You join her in
the journey to figure this out versus this is exactly what happened from the beginning to the end. And you can't ask a question. Anyone who says otherwise is wrong.
Yeah.
It's just, just so different developmentally.
There is a huge thing that Kristen and I observed, because I do remember when we were first married, and then when Trace was born, and then Preston's 2 years younger than Trace, and then Violet is 11, took a 9-year break, and then an 11-year-old. But I do remember us noticing how many parents said at some point, and then they just stopped talking to you. And there seemed to be some moment that we noticed again and again where the kids and the parents stopped talking. And we were like, oh, so apparently the goal is that we would always be talking. Like if you could just keep talking. And then we realized, because the kids start sharing what they're thinking and the parent shuts it down. Or says like, Billy got caught for shoplifting, and the parent freaks out instead of, why do you think Billy shoplifts? Or whatever it is. Is that something for Kristen and I, for mom and I, I do remember us talking about that. Like to be the kind of parent so they can tell you anything. And I remember Trace was very straightforward about what he thought about things, and knowing just the goal, just don't freak out. Like it's just, and they didn't go to religious schools. We lived on the other side of town from the church. All that was very intentional. So we were just humans, and that my work was helping people be more human. And it was rooted in a particular faith tradition, but that informed it. The faith tradition wasn't the point. The point was there are these ancient traditions that help inform and give you images and metaphors for what it means to be human. So that was a different thing that we've noticed in other people. A lot of people didn't see it that way. So some of that was all very intentional. Yeah.
And I think all that comes down to like self-awareness and evaluating ourselves. Like, when are we reacting? And like, how are we doing that?
Right.
I had a friend share with me the other day about how her daughter told her something that she did and she freaked out, but it was because she was worried that the daughter was going to hurt the friend's feelings, and that friend's mom helps carpool. And then she felt guilty, She was like, oh my God, she was mean to the friend whose mom helps carpool, like,
now I just lost my carpool.
Right, exactly. And just kind of reacted, and then took a minute, and then was able to apologize to her daughter later and be like, hey, I reacted because of this fear and anxiety that I was having on my end that didn't really have anything to do with what you did. And just even being able to, that blew my mind that she even broke down for her child, hey, mom was like reacting and I shouldn't have done that. And I think that to me was going hand in hand with what you're talking about, of sort of, even if you mess up, just being like, hey, this is part of being human and we're all in this together. And then giving your permission, therefore, by example, by modeling, like you're saying, it's okay for you to do the same thing and mess up and admit it.
Do you remember when you were 16 and came on tour with me? I was on tour with Deepak Chopra and Elizabeth Gilbert on an Oprah tour. And Trace came with me. Remember that? You were like, I want to come on tour with you.
Yeah.
So we would, I remember one night after the event, because in Oprah World, it's all these black SUVs, and Liz and I and Deepak and Trace are in one of those. Remember those? And
I don't remember being in the car with Deepak. I remember
those
meeting
like
him,
Escalade,
and blacked out windows.
And Deepak is and Liz is asking Deepak, and I are taking turns asking Deepak questions, because we're like, we're going to break this guy down, because he's always just like, take a deep breath. We're all, you know what I mean? He's all just the nature of consciousness is that is all. But we were like, this guy's going to be putty in our hands. So for us, it was just,
we're going to film him doing
trying to get him like lose his mind, like just to get him to break. But he was doing stuff on the nature of consciousness and quantum physics. And I do remember we got back to the hotel, and Trace,
I don't remember this.
Oh yeah. And he gets out of the car, and Trace turns to me and says, That was cool.
Yeah, see, that story. I don't remember that story. That's funny looking back at it.
That was cool.
Even when I was 16,
That's pretty cool.
When I was 16, I don't think I understood really exactly what Deepak was saying. Now I do. So now it's funny thinking back, like, oh, I probably intuitively like picked up that like
Yes.
he was hitting at like some serious truths there, you know. And I'm like, yeah, I'd love to talk to Deepak now. That would be amazing. Like,
We'll do that. We'll sort it out.
Did you break him?
Oh yeah. Finally, I knew it took like weeks
Really?
before I got him to, I just kept asking him personal stories until he started telling me stories. And one time he told me a story that he thought was the funniest thing ever. And he started laughing, and then he got like tears in his eyes and he couldn't stop. And I was like, my work is done here.
Got him.
You didn't make him cry laughing or
Yeah.
punch a wall. One
And it
of
was
the
a story.
two.
He told me a story about he and Jackie O. That was his level of stories.
How old is he?
Yeah. I don't know.
I think
Timeless.
I was going to say
he has no age.
He has no
200
age. He floats above the
years.
ground. And he just exists.
He has no age.
Well, broads, I have learned in recent years that reading labels is key. Like, I can't stress enough how important it is to actually understand, or at least attempt to understand what's going in our bodies and on our bodies. And I've been trying to do that more with everything in general, from the food I feed my family to the skincare products I use. Even my deodorant from Native had to pass that label test. And you know what absolutely does not pass the test is aluminum, which is the #1 ingredient used in non-natural deodorants. And all it does is create a plug in your sweat glands to stop you from perspiring, which is both gross and
Ew,
not good.
yeah.
Not good. Needless to say, I'm fully on board with all natural deodorants. And after trying a fair share of brands, I've tried a good amount of brands, I feel like I've found a true winner with Native deodorant.
Native comes in so many amazing smells too. It's way beyond the basic powder fresh you're usually served from conventional brands. They're available in the best scent combinations. Native has coconut and vanilla, lavender and rose, and my personal favorite is cucumber and mint. They're refreshing. And like Jess mentioned, it's made better, meaning without any talc, no parabens or sulfites. Instead, Native uses ingredients you understand, things like coconut oil, shea butter, and tapioca starch.
But listen, we get it. Some natural deodorants just don't cut it, but Native is so confident you'll love their product. Every order comes with free US shipping plus 30-day returns and exchanges. So go ahead and give it a try so you can see for yourself why so many people, including us, love Native. I would place a hard bet on the fact that you're going to love Native and absolutely want to keep it. I actually just got my family hooked. They were hardcore non-natural deo folks because they said it just didn't work that well for them. Well, cut to a few months of them with Native deodorant. They are completely sold. They are using it on the daily, feeling fresh.
Nice.
We love it. We love it.
So do what we did, do what Jess's family did, make the switch to Native today by going to nativedeo.com/chatty or use promo code chatty at checkout and you'll get 20% off your first order. That's nativedeo.com/chatty or use promo code chatty at checkout for 20% off your first order.
Well, believe it or not, I used to have this long, oh, this is fun. I used to have this long highlighted California Barbie type hair. And if you don't believe me, you can check out some of my past wedding photos for proof. Far cry from my hair now, but years, and I mean years of highlighting and sun damage, of course, left my hair a little bit damaged, a little bit sad, and post-baby, a little bit thinning. And that's why I've put a ton of care into protecting my hair and keeping it full of life. And broads, I just recently started using Function of Beauty's customized hair care, and I am loving it so much. I swear, after I started using my custom formulas from Function of Beauty, my hair has never felt softer or looked fuller simultaneously, and that was never an option for me. It was either if I wanted my thinner hair to look full, it had to be hard and full of product, but now with Function of Beauty, it has body and it's still silky and shiny. Yes.
Not to mention, all of Function of Beauty's formulas are vegan and cruelty-free, and they never contain any sulfates, parabens, or other harmful ingredients often found in hair products. And let's be real, there's nothing more luxurious than knowing something is custom to you. I'm a sucker for it. It makes the whole experience, whether it's drinking a coffee or washing your hair, feel so very elevated. Bougie broads, baby.
So bougie.
Hair broads.
Absolutely. And listen, Function of Beauty's hair formulas are so personalized to you and your hair. They're 54 trillion, that is trillion with a T, possible ingredient combinations. It really does not get much more personalized than that. So you can go online, take their quiz, their quick hair quiz, to help their team of experts determine your formula, and they'll deliver your personalized bottles right to your door. They even have your little name on them, and you can pick fun colors and scents. I mean, it could not be more personalized. Every time I hop in my bath or shower with my shampoo and conditioner, it just makes it that much better. It really does.
So what are you waiting for? Go to functionofbeauty.com/broads to take your 4-part hair profile quiz, and you'll save 20% on your first order. Go to functionofbeauty.com/broads for 20% off, and let them know you heard about it from our show. That's functionofbeauty.com/broads.
But that was, yeah. So Trace was always having these sorts of experiences.
Wow.
Yeah, I don't remember that story, but I like that story though. I'm like,
but I remember him.
I was like, I have
Trace,
no idea where that's
taking
going.
it all. I remember thinking, oh, he's taking it all in.
Yeah.
He's just taking it all in.
Yeah.
It's all. He's not missing a thing. He would say things on a regular basis, where Kristen and I'd be like, oh my God, he's not missing. He doesn't miss a thing. Mm-hmm. So I could just see, like, do you like that?
Yeah. I was like, not a thing, not a damn thing. Yeah.
I was like, I wonder where that's all gonna go, huh? And now he's like one of my teachers at some level. Yeah.
What I'm hearing too is an absence of fear, maybe. in
Absolutely.
approaching.
Yeah, that stuff doesn't get anywhere. I know what I was gonna say about what you said earlier. The parent, if you freak out when the kid shares with you something, then they're not gonna share with you next time. So you have to be playing long game. So if the kid tells you something and your first thought is panic, you just communicated to the kid, whatever you do, don't share me this stuff because I can't handle it.
Right.
So no matter what it is, unless it's like, hey, the house is on fire, I think some people are trapped. Okay. But other than obvious, like heroin, you know what I mean? Than obvious, the goal is to be the person that your kid could tell you stuff and you wouldn't freak out.
And we'll celebrate your curiosity. Like, too, that's the big thing to me, is that when parents shut down what their kids are telling them, you have to celebrate and find the beauty in their questioning and their curiosity, even if it's stuff that you don't believe or stuff that you think, because that will keep your kid coming back to you, keep talking to you, because you're finding beauty in the one thing that in the thing that's most beautiful about life, which is the questioning of it and the getting to the root of it, why we're all here, the mystery of it. But if your kid is coming up with answers and trying to go on that journey and you're shutting that journey down, your kid is not going to want to go on that journey with you and not going to want to share those things with you.
Yeah, that was actually in the book when you talked about curiosity. That was one of my favorite parts, talking about it being like just so anti-despair and looking for like the new day. And that was something that especially right now feels just so, trying to explain to your kid, like, so just so you know, you can't go to school right now. You can't go outside and play because there's fire burning the hills. Like,
you got to wear a mask for 2 reasons.
For 2 reasons, exactly. And trying to have these conversations, and there's this part of you that, like, it's when she then starts asking these questions, the fear place goes, I don't know how much I want to tell her because I don't want to scare her, versus just talking about these questions and allowing for the ability to know that tomorrow is going to be different.
Yeah, can I read this
Please.
the quote that you're talking about? Because Jess sent it to me. Curiosity is an antidote to despair. Despair is the spiritual disease of believing that tomorrow will simply be a repeat of today. Nothing new. But curiosity disrupts despair, insisting that tomorrow will not be a repeat of today. Curiosity whispers to you.
Like, curiosity is the antidote of despair. I love that. Yeah.
Yeah. I'm going to get that tattooed on my body, Rob.
I might get that first.
For back.
Well, you think about how many people who are thriving at some level and you start asking them questions. And generally what you'll come up against is some sort of line of inquiry. They're pursuing some line of inquiry. I wanted to see what it would be like to try to help these people. I wanted to try to create a space where these women would find out they're not alone. I wanted to do a thing where these inmates, hospital workers, men from traumatic background, whatever it is, generally when someone has that, like, oh, they're onto something, underneath it all somewhere is this curiosity.
Even in business, you know.
I was just
like,
going to say business, especially. The person thinks we just want to make money and make a good product. No, you're curious to see if you can. And how many people build the business and then get bored because they answered their question. So they're trying to figure out, we're making lots of money and everybody loves what I'm doing. And yet the number of business people I meet who are experiencing like existential, almost like claustrophobia. And as soon as you could just point out to them, because you answered your question, you can do it. You did it. You can make lots of whatever you showed your parent, whatever stuff you have in your head, whatever questions you had, you answered your question. And so the problem is the success is actually inoculated you against your question. Because you're like, well, this is what everybody wants. People will kill for this job. Great. Someone can have it. No one has to die. And then you can find your next question. But so many times, curiosity is actually the engine and nobody realizes it.
I remember before the pandemic, I would go to
the old world.
Yeah, the old world. I would go to the Comedy Store all the time. And I remember Joe Rogan was up. And it was like right after he had signed, or it was right before he had signed like the 200 mil Spotify deal. But the man was made of money, right? Like biggest podcast in the world almost. And he goes up on stage.
Almost. Chatty Broads is number one.
Number one.
I was gonna say.
Yeah, close to ours. But he goes up on stage. You know, everybody's it's a whole thing. Everyone's erupting. He walks off afterwards and is just on the patio. And I'm kind of like, I'm on the patio too. I'm like tuning into his conversation. And random fans are coming up to him and he's asking them a million questions. And I remember just being like, this is Joe Rogan, who I just listened to him have Bernie Sanders on. He's talking to Elon Musk. And this is this guy's this random 55-year-old like tax attorney. And Joe's like, okay, so explain to me, da-da-da-da. And he's asking him 1,000 questions. And I was like, that's the secret sauce.
Yes.
Yep.
That's the sauce. Doesn't matter how rich you are, how famous you are. Genuine curiosity.
He's like that. And then every once in a while, the mic is turned on.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And then you see that he was Joe Rogan before he was Joe Rogan.
Right.
Which a lot of people don't understand. They're like, oh, the person got famous, so they get, well, of course they have that. No. Long before you ever heard of them, they were who they are. Now you're just seeing what happens when you set your course like that.
And that's why the podcast is so big, because it's authentic. It's really him asking questions like he actually
Curious.
would.
Right. It's like,
to
regardless
know.
of if you can't stand the guy or not, it's like he's sitting and he's just genuinely asking questions. And it's not like he's sitting across and being like, well, I'm an expert. And so I'm going to.
No, he comes across like an everyman.
too.
An everyman just asking questions, asking all these interesting people questions. And that's why the people relate to it so much.
Trace and I have talked about this so much when people just endlessly talk about themselves and how when you just begin with people are interesting, then you go to that dinner party, I'm going to leave knowing your stories. Like my life will be richer because I didn't just want to sit and listen to myself talk.
Right. The dinner party's not boring because no one asked me about myself.
Oh, right. When there's this whole world of drama and ache and pain and redemption there, everybody, it's like 1 inch below the surface. Everybody has this whole world of depth. Whether they're aware of it or not.
It's interesting because there's this dichotomy between that, and in that quote, you're saying that, let me find it again, because there was a part of it I thought was interesting. Oh, despair is the spiritual disease of believing that tomorrow will simply be a repeat of today, nothing new. But curiosity insists that tomorrow will not be a repeat of today. And what I was going to say was, I think there's an interesting dichotomy between that and then at the same time, we were talking about this last week, the peace of knowing that at the same time, there's nothing new, like at all. And how those things are like at odds and also perfectly together at the same time. We were talking about my favorite verse of the Bible. I'm going to misquote it, but it's like, what has been will be, and what's done is done, and there is nothing new under the sun. And the great sense of peace that gives me all the time. And I'm like, it's not the end of the world. This is not where civilization ends, I don't think. But it's like, there is nothing new. But at the same time, that there is something new in every day. And that's just such a beautiful.
Yeah.
And you talked about absolute truths, or like what are the objective truths? One of them is, if you're getting to truth, you'll be always be bumping up against paradox. or a dialectic in which two things that appear to be mutually exclusive are actually both true and they're talking to each other. So the known and the unknown. So what you were just saying about all of this has happened before and yet none of it has happened before, which is why in pretty much every tradition, the wisest ones use riddle, parable, story, the cone. Because if you're getting at actual truth, it'll probably be some sort of dance between two things that appear to be mutually exclusive, and yet somehow they're both true at the same time.
And despair comes from thinking that tomorrow is going to be the same as today. There's nothing new. That's almost an answer of what tomorrow is going to be like. But spirituality is not about who has the best answers. Spirituality is about who can ask the best questions. Because spirituality is actually about questioning this mystery we all live in, and we all spirituality is about the question about what pervades all this rather than giving concrete answers. So when people get caught in their minds and get caught in the answers and certainties, it actually takes you away from real spirit, because real spirit's about questioning the whole mystery and why we're here.
Did you take that from Confucius?
No, I took that from me.
It's an original Trace.
That's a deep cut. That's a Trace
Damn.
deep cut.
Yeah, I felt, when I was reading, and I think that it's, especially, a lot of our listeners come from evangelical Christian background, similar to ours. And when I was reading, and you brought up I felt shame, and I'm like highlighting this like crazy because I feel like there would be such a connection for so many people reading this book when you explain it. And I love when you said you were sitting in these church meetings and you respected the people and you love the people, but you don't want to be here.
This isn't my path. Good for them. I'm so glad they're doing this, but I got to go do my own thing. I got to do this other thing.
And that hit me like a ton of bricks, because when we're talking about truth, and then knowing that you can respect, love, acknowledge that this is working for someone, but you can still feel very alone and in the wrong spot there. And that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah. And for so many people, their own experience is so enmeshed with others that you have to just extract those. Like, they're doing that. Great. That's their path. Mm-hmm. That works for them. Or they're trying to drag other people places they don't want to go. That works for them. They're not curious. The system, whatever it is, they're doing great, mm-hmm. or whatever. Or maybe they're miserable, but they don't see it. So, but that whole section in the book about the deep knowing that I had, and yet I was in a world that had a different knowing. And like, you think about your listeners, how many have a deep sense of guidance and knowing, and they haven't listened to it, mm-hmm. because the people around them were like, no, you're crazy. No, that's not. And then, or they sensed something is off, and then later it really was off, and they knew it and they went along with it. So that's why you're hearing so many people talk about intuition. It's because there's a giant collective reclaiming of deep knowing. And so many people were taught that which is deepest within them is off. Original sin, mm-hmm. That which is deepest within you is wrong. And so they were taught not to trust the Christ in them, the knowing that's present in every human being. So I would argue I'll predict in the next 5-10 years, you'll see such a massive return to intuition as a central guiding, because we have these built-in radars. Mm-hmm. You guys have them, mm-hmm. you know when you know, and you know when you don't listen to it. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're seeing. Yeah.
It's interesting too, because some people will relabel things in order to invalidate their own intuition. So,
right.
It's like my mom, she's like, the Holy Spirit told me. And like, I have to listen to the Holy Spirit, but I can't listen to my heart. And it's like, well, maybe
how
they're one
different?
and the same.
Yes, exactly. exactly. And yeah. And even think about how many people were like, we're doing something horrible to the earth. I know this. I've always known this. Mm-hmm. We're not taking good care of it. It's going to have massive consequences. Way, way back earlier in the road was the time to start changing everything. So even collectively, there's all these ways in which we knew this was headed a certain way. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think for so many, like you said, the relabeling is like such a huge piece. And reading and knowing that, okay, here you are in this position where you're talking about 10,000 people and you're like, but this isn't where I want to be. And you felt shame. And I know, like, for myself personally, with my upbringing, and I was then working at a church for numerous years, and it was that moment where you're looking at the people going, I do respect you. This isn't an issue of me not thinking that you're a bad person or whatever. And I think that can get convoluted a lot too, is people going, if I remove myself, then that's me saying that they are wrong, and wrong means bad. And so then there's this fear of our family will break up. Our friends, they'll think that I think they're a bad person because I'm like, this maybe just isn't for me.
I had to keep going.
Yeah.
I just had to keep going. That's all it is.
Just truck through.
No judgment. I just had to keep going. Mm-hmm. That's how it was like when I talk about when that chapter ended and it was time to go do the next thing. Mm-hmm. It was just a chapter. You don't have to attach all this. Most people, when something ends, because it was wrong or bad, instead of it ended because it was good. We were done. It's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that story in the book, that the leaving Mars Hill, you left on it was a really good day. I think it was a baptism, right?
Oh, knowing that chapter was.
Yeah, like it wasn't that dramatic, like leaving of like, oh, it's horrible, I need to leave. He left because there was like almost like a satisfaction, and like it was your last day there was such a beautiful moment, you know.
Yeah. There was
like
no scandal.
There was a sense of accomplishment, like he actually set out.
There is no other story.
Yeah.
It's just time to go.
Yeah. And then, like, as a child, then you felt it didn't feel like that tension. It was just like, it's just time to move on.
Yeah, it was never really that relevant to me. So like leaving the church was like whatever. Like, oh, we have a church. Like, it really was. It's super weird to think about. Like, because the church was never that. Like, I went there some Sundays, not every Sunday, but it just was never that.
It was Dad's work, Dad's job.
It was just like, you kind of went there, and I was like, I think there's a church somewhere that my dad goes to. Yeah.
But even the idea, like, I remember thinking from Trace's perspective, you get in your car with your mom and you drive across town, and your dad is on a stage with thousands of people. Like, even what do you call that's like a, you know what I mean? What do you even call that? I remember so the idea of any of that being normal, we just were like very aware. That's just sort of this surreal experience that we have. Mm-hmm. But then there's like our family and each other and our friends and us like moving through life together and walking this path together. That's actually the thing. That's where all the real stuff's happening.
Well, maybe there wasn't any drama of you leaving because you left when you were supposed to leave. You know, maybe sometimes people don't listen to their intuition of when it's time to move on, and maybe that's what leads to the drama and the upheaval.
Every time anywhere in the world, I will say to a crowd, "How many of you at some point stayed too long? A relationship, a job, whatever. How many of you at some point?" Every single hand goes up. Yeah. I was like, how many of you, there was a moment when it was time to go or end it and you didn't, and you stayed later and then it soured and got awkward? Every hand goes up.
Painful.
How many of you like can name these dates like to the week or the day? And it's unbelievable how precise. I'll be like anybody, and somebody will be like, I stayed 9 weeks, stayed 10 days. Like, people are incredibly precise about this. I think that's fascinating.
Yeah, that they have the exact number.
And then the question is, how many of you stayed because it was safe, comfortable, known, or you were scared of what people would say? And like, it's just this universal experience. And I think in the book I talk about how it's tied. You think about our ancestors lived in these agricultural settings where you had seasons. We're not angry with winter; it's just over. Now we have spring. And nowadays you can live so detached from the seasons. It's just cycles, concrete and fluorescent. Pardon?
Oh, from the cycles. I was just saying,
right. Exactly. You can now live so divorced from so many of the rhythms that a season is actually like a foreign concept, as opposed to how it used to be, where we're just in the season and it'll be done.
Right.
No judgment.
I mean, even what we put in our bodies doesn't reflect the natural rhythms of the world around us.
Right,
we don't eat
tomato?
seasonal
it's
food.
Minnesota. It's 3 a.m. Right. What is this tomato doing here?
Right. Or this banana from Jamaica in December. Yes. Like, that's not...
Yes, exactly. It's not how it's always been. Like, it's fig. We have a fig tree. It's the 3 days of the year when the fig tree just goes off.
Yeah, it's
like,
just
but
and there's rotting figs everywhere in your yard.
We have this lemon tree that's about to do its thing. It like shows off and makes these bonkers lemons. But like these plants in our yard are like so tune us in. Oh yeah, the lemon thing's coming. Yeah, and then it'll be over, and then there won't be any lemons for a while. Yeah, I know. So much of it is such ancient, like how it always was, and then we're living in this strange, weird, fluorescent, air-conditioned, heated cement thing, thinking that we're somehow advanced.
That's normal.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
We have blue light glasses so that our brains aren't triggered by the blue light at 11
When will things go back to normal? I just want to know things go back to normal.
So I can stare at the screen for 17 hours a day. Oh my God, it's so true. Okay, so can we talk about spirit?
Yes.
Because that was obviously, I mean, the book is called Everything is Spiritual, but spirit is...
So we've been talking about spirit, technically.
I mean, we
this whole
have
time.
been. So true. But can you describe spirit?
Yeah, well, some would say like animating energy. Mm-hmm. Like somebody says, I can't make it, but I'll be with you in spirit. So they're saying there's something about their essence that will be present with you. Everything is spiritual. It's so over the top, the title, but it's also sort of my life work in some ways. It's like this message I've just been giving variations of my whole working life. I wanted people to have this sense that there's depth. There's depth to these experiences that we're having. And that for many people, it's all surface. It's just, well, there's economics, there's money, there's politics, but one way to think about spirit is the depth of all of life. So what's happening politically? Well, underneath it all, many systems are built on lack and scarcity. And those are all spiritual questions. What's the nature of the universe we're living in? Mm-hmm. And that spirit is this animating energy that makes everything. It's moving through everything. And you can connect with, listen to, organize your life around, become more aware of spirit in this moment and the new thing that's coming about. So one of the things I'm intentionally doing in the book is giving you like 19 different ways, 100 different ways to think about spirit so that you come to see not a cold, dead universe where is there any good here?
Right.
As opposed to like an experience we're having that is jammed with wonder and mystery everywhere you look. Which is to me just, it's a better way. It's a better story. Yeah?
Yeah. It was, when I was reading it, I was thinking because probably, I don't know, about a year ago, my husband and I were talking and his big question is always like, I didn't have that thing. Like, you know, when you, for instance, talk about like, you know, you feel that like pulse, there's something there, there's something more. And my husband's always just like, I don't feel that way.
He's a musician.
Uh-huh.
So I would just start, like I would literally just go with him. Yeah, but you've had music in your bones.
Right.
Anyway, keep going.
No, I'm saying when you were saying the 19 ways to describe spirit, I was just like, here, just read this, because it was like, okay, there's so many different ways and you kind of have this, you know, certain small scope because of, you know, how we were raised or whatever, that is how it looks. It's like, no,
right.
That doesn't necessarily mean when we're saying everything is spiritual and your brain goes, well, I don't feel that like, you know, that thing where like I knew at one point that there is a God and like I didn't have this wild experience. But when you're talking about when you listen to a song and the difference between listening to it and feeling the song and like that being spirit.
Oh, and so many people have had profound experiences of waking up and spirit, but they came from worlds that had so narrowly defined all this. So the number of people who are like, I can't get into that religious stuff, but I go out in nature. Yeah, of course.
Right.
Music, of course. Love, having the people who work with their hands and create things, build things. Mm-hmm. Yeah, of course. Of course, it's an experience of the depths of life, an experience of something moving through you. Yeah.
I was thinking about your second birth when I was reading it, because Bekah, specifically with her second birth, had this like really like...
It was just crazy. It was like really, it's like a really satisfying, like really good experience. It was like it was at my home, but it was like after all this pain that I had been going through with contractions for like 6 or 7 hours, when I could actually feel like my son coming through my body, it was like amazing. I was like, I'm about to meet him, and this is like the birth of a new life into the world. And I was experiencing all of that like in real time, and I was smiling and laughing throughout the whole experience of like him literally being born out of my body. And there's video of it. I'm laughing through it. Yeah, I was so happy. That was definitely a very spiritual experience, and of course, one of the most profound spiritual experiences of life.
Because you see how that experience went beyond words. It almost went beyond. It was so beautiful. It almost went beyond any language that you could categorize it.
Oh yeah.
So there's an exercise I like that connects me with spirit, because, like I said, spirit goes beyond words, and it goes beyond the labeling, and it goes beyond the mind. So how about, and spirit is with us at all times. So an exercise I like is, how about I take this experience that I'm having right now and I remove all the labels and the language that my mind gives it. So I can look at this experience right now and go, okay, I'm sitting in Highland Park. I see these walls. I see all this stuff because I'm sitting in a garage in Highland Park and it exists and someone bought it. But you see how when I'm looking at this experience and I'm looking at these beams and I'm taking in all this sensory data, my mind is giving me stories about why it's here.
Yeah.
Okay, but how about I go beyond the mind, and how about I actually look at this experience and actually sit in the fundamental mystery of the fact that there is even something here at all. Like, so instead of just looking at this room and knowing why I'm in this room and, oh yeah, I'm Trace, I'm this body that came in this, how about just the fact that there is even experience right now is rather weird. People don't acknowledge that weirdness enough. We kind of go with these, we have these notions and these reasons for why we're here. And, oh yeah, I was born a while ago and now I'm living my life and I exist at this body, but you don't actually, there is a you within you that is having an experience. There's a you within you that is something is happening to, and that is rather weird.
Well, it makes minutia not minutia anymore.
Exactly.
You're like, I'm standing alive right now. This is wild.
You are existing and having an experience right now, which is rather weird, and there's a fundamental mystery. That's why I say spirituality is about who can ask the best questions, which is, why is this here? What is this? And instead of actually answering it with your mind, just sit with that
and experience.
Sit with that actual mystery instead of, oh, I'm having this experience because X, Y, and Z happened. Rather just, why is all this here?
Or even just like removing the signifier from the signified, you know, like you're talking about. It's like, maybe it's even just instead of making all these assumptions about what's around us. It really shows the power of words. We had a conversation 2 weeks ago with two transgender individuals, and we were talking about the importance of pronouns. And it was just making me think of how the labels that we give ourselves, the labels that other people give us, really do impact the way that we experience the world. And one of the things that they said is, if other people use the labels for me that I want, then they can begin to see me in the way that I want to experience the world. I sort of like threw that off. But basically, if I'm starting to call you something, then I am shifting my perspective to see you in the way that you like want to be seen. And I just think that's so interesting because it can be applied to so many different parts of life. Like you're talking about just stripping away all of the assumptions of what's going on around us, or, you know, even with birth, which I'm really big on, you know, stripping away even the words of like contraction, painful, all these other things that we associate just as given, just the assumptions that we make of like, this is just the way things are. We can remove that and instead replace it with curiosity of like, what am I experiencing
and the
in
beauty,
my body and my mind?
The beauty of your child being born was the being of your child. There's a fundamental being to existence, like they went beyond words. So if you can remove the labels and actually sit in the beauty of the actual being of this experience, the fact that there's a hand right here, this hand has a being right here, and if I label it, oh, this is just Trace's hand that I'm just looking at, you know, there's a reason why this is here, rather than just, wow, the mystery of the being of it right here, the mystery of the experience, because that is really the spirituality's being. It's the fundamental being of life, and that's really what's so beautiful about it.
Well, and a being can bring a new being into being.
Exactly.
crazy. Well, when in the book, when you started to talk about some quantum physics, can you lay some of that shit on us? Because I was laying in bed reading the book just like this afterwards, and I was just like looking at the walls.
That's
and
my
I was
favorite
just
part
like,
of the book, actually.
Oh my God, the particles!
Yeah, wait, can you summarize it, Trace? Because you said it's your favorite part of the book.
Oh, okay, I don't want to steal too much. You want to?
No,
Okay,
we all want to hear you.
So
we all want to hear you.
The reason I love quantum physics so much, and the reason I love that part in the book so much, is because it helps understand being on such a different level. Because you see science is super boring to me. It's like science talk is always like, yeah, whatever. But quantum physics is really interesting to me, because quantum physics, if you break it down, is everything exists. Everything that you see and observe are particles moving. And what quantum physics shows us is that before you observe something, that those particles have endless possibilities. There's endless possibilities until you observe them, and then they choose one of those possibilities. So when the world, so we operate within this framework where there's a world that exists independently of us. See, we exist as these bodies, and there's this world independent of us that just exists without our observation. But what quantum physics shows us is that there's endless possibilities, and we only see one of those until we observe it. So the big paradigm shift is that the world actually relies on your observation. So instead of your existence actually relying on the world's existence actually relies on your existence.
Yeah, sure. Because what exists outside of these walls
Exactly,
right now? We're
because-
literally not experiencing anything past these walls.
Exactly. The only
How we doing?
So the only reality that
bag to
exists is
breathe in.
I know it's a lot. The only reality that actually exists is what you're observing
Right now, yeah.
Exactly, right now. So
Not
that's
even
the
what
only-
we experienced, an hour ago or
Correct.
2 hours ago.
Right.
Yes, because the world out there exists as endless possibilities until I look at it, and then it chooses one of those. So that's a big paradigm shift for people, because you see how we grow up thinking that we exist within these bodies, and there's a whole world that's disconnected from us and independent of us, and it creates this fundamental disconnection in our lives that, oh, I'm just here in this world, but I exist, and there's this whole world that's independent of me and not reliant on me. And that allows us, that fundamental separation is the belief of separation that allows us to then separate other parts of our lives. So it allows us to go, this part of my life is spiritual, but this part's not spiritual. See, there's spiritual people and there's not spiritual people. There's spiritual things and there's not spiritual things. But you see what quantum physics shows us is that everything is spiritual, because everything relies on your observation.
Okay, but at the same time, how does that not? Okay, how does that not then fuel? How do we stop that from fueling a sense of narcissism of like how what I experience informs my reality, and like that's, you know what I mean, like the separation.
7 billion other people.
I was gonna say because mine too. Yours,
No,
all of
because
us.
just the
that sense of like empathy. I mean, because
Yeah, or solidarity or community, or it heightens the sense of, oh, our common bonds are like really, really central to all of this. So it heightens. Yes, how are you doing now with quantum physics?
I mean, now my brain is, you think about the fact that you're talking about the particles, and like they don't make a determination until you acknowledge them. And then to me, like my thought is that breaks down narcissism even more, because it makes your role really, really fucking valuable. Like what you do affects things.
wait, no, but that's what I'm saying.
Knowledge affects
you see the
things.
paradigm shift from I'm this insignificant being that exists in this huge world, and everything goes on, and I just exist for this small amount of time. Rather, you shift that, and you take the power back, and you go, no, actually everything relies on my observation.
Wait, so then how does that break down narcissism?
Here's one way to think about it. The question is, what's everything made of? So roughly late 1800s, for a couple thousands of years, philosophers had this idea of that which can't be divided. There must be an atom, some sort of smallest unit, building block. Then 1890s-ish, for the first time they identified atoms. But then they discovered, an atom is actually made of smaller pieces called particles. And then they with new technology, discovered you could actually split those small particles. Then with even newer technology, discovered you could even split the particles that make the particles that make the particles that make the atoms. So with each new particle that has been discovered, they discovered you can break it down even smaller. So as opposed to growing up, you wondered how infinite the universe is out. Quantum physics raises the question, how infinite is it in? Can it just keep being split? So when you get down to the subatomic particle level, these tiny bits and pieces of energy. They've discovered that these tiny, tiny, tiny particles can come into existence and then disappear, and they don't know where they come from and where they go. So your shoes, our bones, this wall are made of atoms. Atoms are made of particles, and particles in their essence are relationships of energy. So the couch you're sitting on ultimately is a relationship of energy. So the universe is not static objects arranged in empty space. The universe is ultimately a relationship of energy, which is an exchange, which is a coming and going. So you think about the self, you exist in this infinite set of relationships. So no wonder that person was draining, or no wonder that experience sucked the life out of you. You're a relationship of energy interacting with other relationships of energy. So all the people who are like, I'm just really into, I think relationships are really important. Yeah.
You are one.
And then you think about matter, the idea of stuff, wood, stone, brick, bone, is all ultimately made of atoms, made of particles, which is ultimately, so the universe at its core is energy in relationship. So that just is a very different way to understand. No wonder all these experiences affect us like they do. I mean, you know when you're not safe. How do you know this? Unless you are this relationship of energy, highly aware of all of these things. So quantum physics has so profoundly created this revolution of how we even understand the universe that we're living in, from the observation of the particle effects, what the particle even does. An atom in many ways is a cloud of possibilities. So there's uncertainty. We don't exactly know what all these particles are going to do in the next millisecond. So we have probabilities, which is how you make a flat screen TV. But there's also a great deal of unknowing baked into the whole thing. Uncertainty is the word they use for it. Yeah, I know.
Yeah,
I know.
it's like, yeah.
Pretty cool.
No, I was just going to say, well, this is what I want to hear. To wrap it all up, Trace, why should people buy and read your dad's book?
I think that people should buy and read my dad's book, because the best thing about this book is that everyone takes something different away from it. Wherever someone is, it's written in such a way that there's so many different, it speaks to, that's been my favorite part of seeing people react to this book, is seeing what it meant to each person. Different people are at different spots in their life, and different people have different questions. And the honesty at which he tells his narrative and his journey resonates in a way that people take different things out from it, and have has the impact that it's had on the different impacts that it's had on people have been really fun to watch. And I think it's a profound, timeless lesson that everything is spiritual, and one that is especially needed in this time. It will always be needed, because, like I said, it's timeless. Yes, this book it speaks to so many different parts of you, and people at so many different areas, and it's just a great book right now. Yeah.
I mean,
Could you ask for more?
just I'm on the sleeve.
My work is done here. I'm done. It's fantastic.
Well, is there anything that you want to say before just please plugging away about this book?
It's so great coming out here and talking to you guys.
It's so nice.
That's
this was
what
so
I have
fun.
to say. It's so much fun.
It was great.
You ask great questions, and I just love what this whole world you've created. It's amazing.
Well,
Thanks.
thank you. And the Broad
love it
Squad
too.
loves you. Broad Squad, remember.
Oh, shout out to
Hashtag
the Broad
Squad.
Squad.
Hashtag Broad Squad.
They're powerful, right?
Yeah. They come in. So you have a podcast that they can check out as well.
The Robcast, yes.
The Robcast, we will link it. We will link Everything is Spiritual, the book. Also, now on Audible, you can listen to Rob read it himself.
Yeah. Oh, and we released a couple weeks ago an introduction to Joy, the new film.
Did you really? Okay, so I saw it IRL in Highland Park.
Oh, did you?
I did.
The night we filmed?
Yes.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
So am I in the footage?
Yeah. So you're in it.
Great. I
Hey,
hope
by
that
the way, I
there's
came to tell you you're in a
tight-
film.
There's a tight cameo. But I will highly recommend that. That was
That's great. I'm glad that I can watch it
We
now
put it
because
on
you were
YouTube.
talking about it.
You put it on YouTube.
Awesome.
Okay,
Yeah.
amazing.
Awesome.
Because I took one of our dear friends who, in the current season, because we went and saw it around December, and her father passed away around December a few years ago. So it's always a tough time for her.
Yeah.
And I saw Introduction to Joy, and I'm like, well, this seems like a timely thing to take her to. And when I say it's timely now specifically, I don't think I can be more emphatic about that. So I would definitely check that out.
Great.
And yeah, anything else?
It's wonderful.
Anything else? It was so nice. Thank you, Trace,
Yeah,
for
no,
joining.
such a-
I
thank you
love
guys.
this.
This
It's
was- this was such a
pressure.
blast. This was so
I'm like,
fun.
hey, my son will be with me, and we show up and there's an extra mic. I love
There
it.
we go.
Yeah.
Well, thank you both so much. Broads, everything will be in the episode notes below that you can check it out, link, buy, purchase, all the what. And
Yeah.
we'll chat soon.
Chat soon.